room last night, speaking behind a podium at the White House, using the trappings of his office to deliver a statement that was baseless and was not backed up by evidence. The President of the United States essentially alleging that there is a conspiracy to steal and rig the election so that he loses. Again, there's no evidence to back up that.
Divided the Republican Party when he swept into the White House 4 years ago, and now he appears to be dividing the GOP again on what might be his way out. Republican lawmakers have both blasted and bolstered President Trump's repeated assertions over the past 24 hours without any specific evidence of widespread fraud in this election.
Unsolicited ballots without any verification measures whatsoever.
Well, we're interrupting this because what the President of the United States is saying, in large part, is absolutely untrue. He began, and we're not going to allow it to keep going because it's not true. He began with there were legal votes, and if they only count the legal votes, I easily win. If they count the illegal votes, they're trying to steal the election. There is not a scintilla of evidence that this is true. None. There's only words here. No truth. He said the pollsters knowingly got the polls wrong to create voter suppression. There is no evidence of any kind that this has happened, and he's provided.
Has found hundreds of thousands of questionable ballots sent to LA County voters. Investigative reporter David Goldstein has this story.
We found thousands of people in LA County received not one, but 2 ballots in the mail. Thousands more were sent to people who moved or even died. You remember Carol?
I do remember Carol.
Becky Sprigg has lived in this Santa Monica apartment complex for 30 years. That's why she was surprised when this ballot was delivered to Carol's old apartment, even though Carol, whose name we're not revealing, moved 15 years ago. And we found...
In fact, breaking news on 2 fronts in the race for the White House. First, NBC and CNN are both now calling the state of Michigan for Joe Biden.
But as that happens, chaos at the TCF Center in downtown Detroit, where Michigan just became a whole lot more than a battleground state, as people demand access inside to watch the vote being counted. Now the first lawsuit has been filed as the key races sit on a razor's edge.
Good to have you with us for
underway into alleged voter fraud in DuPage County, with several suspected cases having been caught by the county clerk's office.
WGN's Brona Tumulty is joining us now with more details. Brona.
That's right. 9 cases in total are or have been under investigation, and those involved applications being sent in for mail-in ballots, except the people requesting them had already passed away.
Over mail during this election season, this story may hit a nerve. Mail-in ballots that were, until today, just sitting in trash, along with a wedding announcement, a last will and testament, and other important documents.
Channel 2 investigator Robert Arnold is solving the mystery tonight by tracking down how that mail got into that dumpster. Robert?
Well, that's the $64,000 question U.S. postal inspectors are working on now. We do know the mail was not stolen here. It was tossed in that dumpster. As for who did it, one big clue was captured by complex security cameras. It's 3:29 a.m. and you're watching 2 men, faces covered, dumping 2 large boxes of mail in a dumpster at the Willow Run townhomes on Perry Road near Winfern. Later in the morning, a resident noticed the dumped mail and alerted complex management.
I was wondering, what is this? You know, where did it come from? Who did this?
John Lester got everything out of the dumpster and into the complex's office while they waited for postal inspectors.
All of it was opened and dumped.
Here's a rundown of what was tossed in the trash.
This here was last will and testament for a child. When we seen it was a bunch of personal information. There's a bunch of legal documents in there, voter ballots, there's wedding announcements.
You heard that last part right. We saw one absentee ballot, a vote for President Donald Trump, bound for Baton Rouge. Another was heading to California.
It's very concerning.
When a postal employee arrived to collect the mail,
this raw mail,
raw mail.
Raw mail means it hadn't been processed yet. See, no postmarks. None of this mail was stolen here. The Postal Service reports at least some of the mail was stolen from the drop-off boxes at the post office on West 19th, a good 12 miles away. That may not be the only place that was hit, though.
This was just sent yesterday.
An employee of the Guest law firm told us these documents were left at the post office on Timmins near Lakewood Church.
That's what's so shocking. That where the post office is located and it's found way over here.
And that brings us back to this video. You can't see a license plate, but here's a better look at the car. And the two men are clearly dumping the mail.
The man I spoke with today has a reason for taking out the trash. It's his job. But he also believes you should be sending your ballots in or taking them in person, which is the exact opposite thing that elections officials want you to do. They'd like you to drop them off or put them in the mail.
It has nothing to do with political. I want a fair election.
Charles West didn't feel like things were fair when he says he found Utah voter ballots in a dumpster Thursday morning.
I dumped a can today, and I'm finding ballots in the garbage can. Pardon my French, just mad.
Charles has been working in waste collection for 5 years. The ballots he found in Sandy were a first.
No joke, look. That's what I was able to find that fell out of the garbage can. It was an 8-yard can. I don't know if you guys understand what that is. That's a pretty big can.
There are plenty of reasons why the ballots could have been found that way, from theories of them being stolen from mailboxes and dumped to being spoiled addresses that were incorrectly put into circulation. Either way, it is a little odd to find ballots spewing out of a dumpster.
I think it's very important that we have a secure vote and people's information isn't compromised. I mean, this opens these people up to fraud. It opens up to everything. I'd be terrified if my
postal worker was caught on camera dumping mail. Look at these images showing a mailman throwing mail into a popular dump site. 41 Action News reporter Charlie Keegan went to that site at 45th and Garfield and met with the man in charge of investigating dumping crimes.
Well, let me give you a look here around 45th and Garfield. The city calls this one of its top 3 illegal dump sites, and you can see all sorts of trash here. But what we noticed this morning, as you look down the embankment, down the hill here, actually a couple of representatives from the USPS are here, and they're cleaning up some of the mail that the city found here. Now, I want to talk to Alan Ashers, who is the city's illegal dumping investigator and specialist, and tell us a little bit about how you discovered what appears to be mail being dumped here by a Postal Service employee.
Sure. I was looking through our surveillance camera footage and noticed a mail vehicle sitting here, which is not unusual. A lot of people take their breaks here. But once he left, I found some mail that wasn't here when he pulled up. Just little white letters like you would see in your mailbox. Looked a little suspicious, so I came out here and I started taking a look around, and I found some letters and stuff like that. But then I started noticing a trail of flyers and other things lead me to the side of this hill here where there's just bundles and bundles of mail that were dumped down the side of this hill here.
And now what's it like to see this morning, the USPS here actually cleaning some of it up?
Well, it's fantastic. It could sat here for, until the city cleans this area up once a month on its own. You just can't afford to come out and clean it up every darn day or we would be.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Alan.
A scandal in New Jersey. A postal worker arrested today for throwing away mail, nearly 2,000 pieces of mail. And the headline here, 99 of the pieces were general election ballots from the Hudson County Board of Elections. They were supposed to be delivered to residents in West Orange. One person responsible, almost, for the disappearance of dozens of votes. New Jersey reporter Tony Angel with the story. She's live at federal court in Newark. Tony.
Good afternoon. Like you said, that discarded mail included those 99 ballots for the general election, and officials have told us that those ballots were sent out in the mail again, so now they are in the rightful hands of the voters who were supposed to get them in the first place. I'm going to step out of the way so you can see that dumpster there. It's one of 2 where the discarded mail from that same mail carrier was found, and here is a picture of that mail. Howard Dinger snapped this photo and posted it on social media. He came across it while he was making an unrelated delivery to a nearby bank. Postal investigators arrested mail carrier 26-year-old Nicholas Beauchesne of Kearney. He lives close to this location. He was in court this afternoon on charges involving throwing away nearly 2,000 pieces of mail, some of it in a dumpster in West Orange. In fact, those general election ballots were for voters in West Orange. As you said, our New Jersey crews spoke to Mr. Dinger about discovering all that tossed mail.
At first it looked like, junk mail, circulars and things like that, and then I flipped over a piece and I saw something that said address correction, that kind of thing, whatever, when it's important mail, that thing. Flipped through a few more pages, I saw something that said ballots on it, and at that point I knew it was serious.
White House press briefing. If you didn't, you missed Democratic operatives posing as reporters, stunned by the idea that mail-in voting might not be totally 100% secure. It was amusing to watch. Of course, the risks of mail-in voting are obvious. The latest example of that came today. DOJ announced that the FBI and the Pennsylvania State Police are investigating fraud in mail-in ballots in Luzerne County. That's the place Donald Trump won by double digits 4 years ago. According to DOJ, several military ballots were, quote, discarded. Investigators have recovered a total of 9 ballots so far. Not surprisingly, the DOJ says an overwhelming majority of those ballots were cast for guess who? Donald Trump. Meanwhile, in Greenville, Wisconsin, authorities announced Tuesday that 3 trays of mail, including mail-in ballots, were discovered in a ditch, not counted, in a ditch. We've seen other examples of this throughout the year, including deliberate mail-in ballot fraud in New Jersey and in West Virginia. Just hours ago, in the state of Texas, the state attorney general announced that a county commissioner and several others have been arrested in an organized mail-in balloting scheme that took place during the 2018 Democratic primary. But to reporters in Washington, this is impossible to believe. For the people doing it, it is confirmation that actually it works.
It's happening right now. There they are. The Biden votes coming in, just like everywhere else. We're going to just watch it, I guess.
That we need to be in California doing the same thing. But we need to get people in Wisconsin, Michigan, all these different places, guys. Put millions of dollars into the state of Arizona.
The Clark County Registrar went with a machine called the Agilis machine. And at least 200,000 votes were counted through the signature verification process of this machine only. I will repeat for the media, no human beings looked at those signature matches to confirm they were in fact matches. Now we have
yourself to make sure your vote counts.
If you know how to mail a letter, you already know how to mail in your vote.
How you doing? Thank you very much.
But how long might it take for that vote to actually arrive and be counted?
You're welcome. Have a good afternoon.
We decided to test it, sending 100 mock ballots simulating 100 voters from locations all across Philadelphia to a P.O. box we set up to represent a local election office. A couple days later, we mailed 100 more, using the same size envelopes and the same class of mail as real ballots here. To approximate the weight, we even folded mock votes into every one. In the following week, we checked our P.O. box for the results.
Mail pickup notice, there's more.
When we went to collect everything, though,
Nothing? No.
most of our votes seemed to be lost.
That's all I have back there right now. That's nothing.
You're sure? Huh? You're totally sure? I believe you.
All right, then. Have a good day.
Okay, take care.
We had to ask for a manager
We're trying to do something about mail-in ballots.
and explain ourselves before someone finally found our votes.
They have me somewhere else.
Okay, thank you.
1, 2. We soon discovered another problem, missorted mail. 2 pieces of it.
We got a birthday card from Mike to Ronnie. Have a sweet B-day. Get it? There's a B on top.
When the birthday greetings ended,
12, 13.
We found a bigger issue. 21% of our votes hadn't materialized after 4 days. And the batch we'd mailed a week prior, some of those were missing too.
So of our 100 ballots, 97 arrived, which sounds pretty good, unless you consider the fact that that means 3 people who tried to vote by mail in our mock election were in fact disenfranchised by mail.
In a close election, 3% could be pivotal, especially in what's expected to be a record year.
Second whistleblower we have not talked about before described leaving on, and I'm going to use the male pronoun again, leaving on his lunch hour. And while he was on his lunch hour, he decided to exercise around the counting center. While he was walking, he noticed a van pulled up at the center marked Biden-Harris. The doors of the van were open, ballots were clearly visible, ballots were opened with letter openers, and ballots were filled in and resealed in envelopes.
No integrity.
Anybody try to prevent oversight of vote counting? It's a really simple question. What's the answer? One poll watcher, a man called Brian McCafferty, explained that election officials just weren't allowing him to watch what they were doing.
Okay, my name's Brian McCafferty. I was inside the Philadelphia Convention Center today, observing people counting votes. I got thrown out because I took video of corrupt people trying to undermine the President of the United States. And this gentleman right here, he threw me out. He told me I'm not allowed back in. And the reason is because I took video of people trying to undermine and have a coup against the President of the United States.
Or just a few of about, I'd say 50 to 60 poll watchers who will all testify that they were uniformly, that they were uniformly deprived of their right to inspect any single part of the mail-in ballots. As you know, from the very beginning, the mail-in ballots were a source of some degree of skepticism, if not a lot of skepticism, as being innately prone to fraud. The New York Times had written that 10 years ago under other circumstances, but of course changed their mind once it was a situation involving President Trump. Congresswoman Jordan, in her vast and compendious review of various forms of voter fraud, cited mail-in ballots as the most prone to fraud. With all that, you would have expected there'd be a high degree of security and a high degree of inspection that would be provided for mail-in ballots. Instead, in the wisdom of the officials, Democrat officials here in a city that's been Democrat for 60 years and has a very long history of voter fraud, documented history of voter fraud, instead of going to a high degree of care to allow inspections of the mail-in ballots, there was no inspection of a single mail-in ballot. Those mail-in ballots could have been for anybody. Those mail-in ballots could have been for anybody they wrote in. Those mail-in ballots could have been written the day before by the Democratic Party hacks that were all over the convention center. What I'm saying to you is not a single one was inspected as the law required. Even when a court order was obtained to allow the Republican inspectors to get 6 feet closer, they moved the people counting the ballots 6 further feet away. It's really simple. If you have nothing to hide with these mail-in ballots, you allow inspection. I mean, this is common knowledge, common practice in the examination of absentee.
Hello, America. Hello, Georgia. Let me be frank and earnest. There's a dead cat on the end of this line. And it's stinking. It's stinking with fraud. It's stinking with lack of transparency. It's stinking with non-accountability. And it's stinking with those who call themselves wanting to have fair elections. It's stinking with their absence. Where is fair fight if you're standing for people's rights and their right to vote, and every vote is counted, every legal vote is counted? Where is fair fight? I'll tell you where fair fight is. Fair fight to that crowd is fair when their man is still in the election. That's when it's fair to them. As a member of the Georgia General Assembly, 12-year member, it is my duty to speak up for every Georgian when their vote is not being counted, when their vote is not being counted accurately, and when there's all this type of irregularities taking place. Why haven't we called on Jimmy Carter to come? He can go to other countries and see their process through. And I don't mean that in a bad sense, because I like one of our native sons, President Carter, but he needs to be here if he's for fair votes, accountability, and transparency. That's what I like about Donald Trump. He travels with a set of twins. One named accountability and the other one named transparency. That's what I like about him. I've had Democrats, Republicans, black, white, gay, the whole across the whole state of Georgia. Matter of fact, across this country, saying what is going on in Georgia. I may not agree with your candidate, Vernon, but if they take my vote, if they take your vote away from you, they're taking my vote away from me. That's the American spirit. And what I see happen, this is a sham. This is a sham, and it's disgraceful. And criminal. I think it has the potential of criminality here. I just want, like every Georgian want, we want things to be done by the book. We can send a man to the moon, but we can't count votes accurately. I'm talking about the legal ones now. And we can't do it within 24 hours. How does a state the size of California get theirs in and Georgia can't get its in? That's because if you look, an example of the pandemic of failed leadership is where all these Democrats who are running these cities and overseeing these county elections, that's where you see, literally, I was getting ready to say something, but I'll be all over the damn news.
Go into politics. That's the only way you get on the news.
Well, let me say this. I hope the news media learn from this. It's been you carrying the false narrative of these false polls coming from these liberal universities.
That's right.
And you and these pollsters have done more to interfere with this election than Russia and China combined.
I think that it is a corrupt, stolen election. I suspect they're going to try to steal North Carolina next in Fulton County, Georgia. We believe these people are thieves.
The posting that was placed on our website on election night and yesterday was incorrect. We determined that our tabulation software was incorrectly duplicating those records, and so the 120,000 that you may have seen on our website is an incorrect number. That has been corrected.
100 batches to go through, okay? And each could contain up to 25 ballots. Officials tell me it's going better than they've expected, and they've already reviewed more than 1,000 batches today alone. In Gwinnett County,
the timeline for me is the sooner the better, but we also want to make sure we're doing it right.
These teams of 3 have their hands full. A representative from each party and an election official focusing on 3,200 batches of absentee mail-in ballots that must be checked after a software glitch.
So we'll look for clues, like if somebody made checks throughout the vote, we'll go with the checks. If everything's a check and this one's an X and they initialed it, maybe that's, we can make that resolution pretty easily.
The 3,200 batches could affect as many as 80,000 ballots, and in each batch, there is usually at least one that needs to be reviewed. She adds that the results from the ballots not affected in a batch were released to the Secretary of State on election night and are already included in the state numbers.
The panels do not look at every ballot in the batch. The system will display the ballot that needs to be reviewed.
Final results might not be released for another 3 days as this checking process takes time. In Georgia, counties have 10 days after the election to certify results. That brings us to November 13th. The Secretary of State has 17 days after the election to certify results, which puts us at November 20th. Voters have until this Friday to correct problems with absentee or provisional ballots.
Our country's just going through such a divided time, and I think it's important that we all get involved and do what we can to sort of keep the boat steady.
Is a huge surplus of absentee ballots due to the pandemic. Here in Fulton County, where we are in Atlanta, a water pipe burst at the State Farm Arena yesterday, delaying results at one of the largest processing centers in the county. Fortunately, there was no damage to the absentee ballots themselves. In at least 7 Georgia counties, the voting hours had to be extended because of technical glitches. And there are also, remember, 2 critical U.S. Senate seat races here. One of them is heading to a runoff, and the other one is still too close to call, but the Republican incumbent, David Perdue, is right now a little bit ahead. Gail?
All right, Mark, still so much
more information to come from Georgia, but of all the things that could go wrong, nobody saw a pipe burst coming. Thank goodness for plumbers. Thank you very much, Mark.
Yes.
Authorities in Pennsylvania say 9 military ballots cast for President Donald Trump were discarded in Luzerne County. All the discarded ballots were cast for Trump. The United States Attorney's Office of the Middle District of Pennsylvania says an investigation was launched Monday in response to reports of potential issues. The FBI and Pennsylvania State Police are conducting interviews and recovered and reviewed physical evidence. Pennsylvania is one of the highly contested battleground states heading into the presidential election. Katie Johnston for CBS.
2 minutes. So when I listened to Joe talking about a transition, there's been no transition from when I won. I won that election. And if you look at crooked Hillary Clinton, if you look at all of the different people, there was no transition because they came after me trying to do a coup. They came after me spying on my campaign. They started from the day I won and even before I won, from the day I came down the escalator with our First Lady. They were a disaster. They were a disgrace to our country. And we've caught them. We've caught them all. We've got it all on tape. We've caught them all. And by the way, you gave the idea for the Logan Act against General Flynn. You better take a look at that because we caught you in a sense. And President Obama was sitting in the office. He knew about it, too. So don't tell me about a free transition. As far as the ballots are concerned, it's a disaster. A solicited ballot, okay, solicited is okay. You're soliciting, you're asking, they send it back, you send it back. I did that. If you have an unsolicited, they're sending millions of ballots all over the country. There's fraud. They found them in creeks. They found some with the name Trump, just happened to have the name Trump just the other day in a waste paper basket. They're being sent all over the place. They sent 2 in a Democrat area. They sent out 1,000 ballots. Everybody got 2 ballots. This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen. The other thing, it's nice on November 3rd, you're watching and you see who won the election. And I think we're going to do well because people are really happy with the job we've done. But you know what? We won't know. We might not know for months because these ballots are going to be all over. Take a look at what happened in Manhattan. Take a look at what happened in New Jersey. Take a look at what happened in Virginia and other places. They're not losing 2%, 1%, which, by the way, is too much. An election could be won or lost with that. They're losing 30 and 40%. It's a fraud, and it's a shame. And can you imagine where they say you have to have your ballot in by November 10th? November 10th. That means that's 7 days after the election, in theory, should have been announced.
Okay.
We have major